All right, in today's discussion on goat theory, we are going to open up the part of the golf swing that's the most overlooked, and that is the rear, the rear view. The engine of the swing is really on display here, and so we're going to take a look at a few different swings, including Tiger, of course, but we're going to start here with Justin Thomas. So note I've drawn a line basically on where his spine, if it kept extending through the center of his pelvis, in other words, his sacrum here in the center of his pelvis, that's where this line is drawn. What you'll see in all powerful players, and I'm going to talk to you about how this is done in just a moment, is that center part of the pelvis and the sacrum will move toward the target to start as they rotate. But more importantly, and this is the big difference, is where it goes in the downswing. So let's take a look. As he begins to rotate, note that it ends up behind, either on the line or behind where it started at impact. Now, in amateur golfers, you'll see the exact opposite. We'll take a look at those in just a minute. And even tour players, you'll see this, especially the ones who don't have the speed of the more powerful players. Now let's take a look at Dustin Johnson here. You'll see the exact same thing from this view. He's going to first move in front. So we've drawn a line in the center. He's going to move in front of that line. And then as he begins rotation, note you can see the center belt loop on his pants there move back behind where it started at address. Now let's take a look at somebody who doesn't do this. All right, so on the left here we got Zach Johnson, and on the right we've got Brian Gay. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a rear view of Brian, but we'll work with what we got here on the face-on view. You can get a lot of the same idea. But these are two notoriously short hitters on the tour, and a lot of people don't realize that Zach Johnson, when he was on the Hooters tour back in the early days, back even when I was out there playing, he was actually one of the longer hitters out there. And then over time, he became shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And now let's take a look at how his spine and pelvis move. Now, he's obviously making the same move where he gets out in front at the beginning, but look where he is at impact. He never gets back behind. So instead, all he has is a lateral drive this way, which is why you see this left leg starting to bow out, and it's just sliding through without any rotational speed. So because he can't rotate to create any speed, he's got to fire his arms, he's got to slide quickly, he's got to do all sorts of things to try and compensate to make up for this power. And of course, as he moves this big lateral move instead of rotating back like the goats do, then you'll see that he ends up humping the ball. Now let's take a look at Brian Gay, another extremely short hitter, I think one of maybe the shortest hitters of his era. And you'll see a lot of the same things in Brian's swing. So if we go put a line, obviously with face-on view, you're not going to be able to tell exactly where it is, but you're going to see he makes the old lateral move going back, big lateral move. Instead of thinking of increasing pressure, he needs something to trigger a swing, so he makes it a lateral move versus what I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is pushing into the lead foot first. So then as he rotates back, now as he starts down, you'll see the same thing. He's going to extend. He's got nothing left to hit with, no lags, no leverage in his wrist. And now we can guess, I'll put a different color line on here, but this is not meant to be exact. But if this is the front of his pelvis, the center of his pelvis is or the back of his center of his pelvis is probably somewhere here. So like Zach, he's way out in front, and it costs him all his power. So when we look at the goats, they don't do that. This has been known for a long, long time. Let's take a look at a couple more. Okay, two more. First, we're going to look at Jon Rahm here. Jon, obviously an incredibly powerful player with an incredibly short swing. So how does he do that? Well, let's take a look at how his hips move. As he goes back, you're going to see him move in front of that line. And then, unlike Zach and Brian, he gets back on that line. So there's no lateral sliding. He's rotating. And where is he rotating from? That's really the key. And that rotation is generated up here. So the key to this, if you don't know how to trigger your swing, if you don't know how to start your swing, then nothing really makes sense because you'll feel tension in your arms and shoulders immediately. And you'll almost always move your head in front of the ball or your whole body in front of the ball, your pelvis in front of the ball. You certainly won't get back onto this line where we see here. So how do you trigger your swing and why? Well, let's take a look at Kyle Berkshire here on the right. For those of you that don't know Kyle, He's one of the longest hitting dudes on the planet, and he has what a lot of people considered a pretty unconventional start to his swing. So if you haven't seen this before, probably seems a little crazy. But if you understand, of course, I'm a Swing Catalyst ambassador, and he's on a Swing Catalyst force plate here. And so I have his data. We can look at it. Actually, why don't we do that? Let's take a look at his swing with looking at the force plate data, so you can see what's happening in the real world here, not just in theory world. What I want you to pay attention to here is, obviously, as he's moving back and forth, the pressure plate is showing what's actually happening on his feet here. So you're going to see, obviously, all of his weight as he lifts his right foot into the air. You're going to see all of his weight go one side and then the other. So right now, his left foot's literally in the air. So 100% of his pressure you see is on the right, and this little dot here, we're going to talk about that in a moment, his center of pressure has moved all the way to the right, and then he's going to go forward, and you'll see his center of pressure move very, very quickly all the way to the left. And quickness is a big piece of what we're going to talk about. But what's really happening here, and what needs to happen in your swing, and how to get power and speed and how to trigger the swing the right way so that everything starts to happen on automatic, is what I'm talking about, what you see Kyle doing here. He's pressuring onto the left side, 100% of his pressure. And then to start his swing, he doesn't hesitate. As soon as he goes onto that right foot, now he is pivoting on that right and immediately, as quickly as possible, trying to move his pressure back to the lead side. And you're like, wait a second. No, he's making a backswing. What do you mean his pressure's trying to move back to the lead side? Well, focus on this little dot here again. I want to draw your attention up here. So just watch as he's going back. Almost 100% of his weight is on his right side right now, 90%. But look where his center of pressure is moving. Look at this dot. Now wait a second, how can he be moving his pressure to the right, or increasing the pressure on his right, and the center of pressure moving back to the left? This is key to getting your swing to both start correctly and sequence correctly. And because it's so easy to see in Kyle's swing, it's really fun to look at how pressure moves and how to start the swing. So when you think about your swing, if you push pressure into the lead side first, that's going to give you momentum. So one thing I want you to notice here, here's where his hands are if he's quote unquote, give or take, centered. So we'll put his pressure on equal between each feet. 53% on one, 47% on the other. Here's where his hands are. So I'm just going to kind of draw a blob here on where his hands are when he's equal pressure. Now as he moves forward, his hands obviously move forward. This is a big exaggeration for what you will see in most players, but Tiger Woods does the same thing. You'll watch his hands go forward, but it's just way, way smaller. And then as he goes back, he uses that to create momentum to start swinging the club back. You can kind of rock back and forth as you're watching this video and feel this to give your swing a trigger. But what's really important is that the trigger is dynamic in the sense that when you're pressuring onto this right side, it's helping you immediately start falling back to the left, or even pushing. The ground is literally pushing against this right leg, and that's why you see his center of pressure dot moving forward, even though it looks like he is still kind of loading up in the backswing per se. But you can see that pressure dot is already now almost all the way back to his lead side, and he's not even close to halfway down, and he's got his pressure at peak. His center of pressure has moved as far left as it's going to go, and his lead arm is parallel to the ground. Now here's the difference for amateur golfers. They never get to the lead side soon enough. It never ever happens. They almost always are way too late, and it's because they're trying to move laterally to shift their hips instead of shifting pressure. And when you see the most powerful players, and I like Kyle's because it's exaggerated, but all the best players I just showed you are doing the same thing. His hip, his center of his pelvis, if we could see a rear view, you would see it be moving back because he's rotating. So this is what the GOATs all do in their swings. If they have any real power at all, you're going to see them never move just laterally with the back view, like we saw of Brian Gay and Zach Johnson. Not that you can't play great golf. You're just not going to have any power doing that. And it's hard to sequence the swing, and it's really hard to trigger the swing. So if you have a hard time getting your swing started. Just feeling that you don't have all this tension in your arms and shoulders, and then you just fire all arms and shoulders on the way down. I created a video that's going to walk you through exactly how to do this and how to get your swing to sequence so that you rotate correctly. Because if you next time you go to the course, video your swing, and if you see your pelvis like you saw in Zach Johnson's, where it's in front of where it started, you are killing yourself with robbing yourself of tons of power in your swing. And really it comes down to something as simple as what you see Kyle doing here. Push into the lead side to start, push into the right side as you go back, hit the wall with the right, rotate. This part of your body should be very coiled at this point and ready to unwind. And when you rotate this part of your body, that's what moves that sacrum back like you see in the goats. So take a look at the video down below. I'll put a link in the description. But if you have a hard time triggering your swing, if you have a hard time feeling pressure, moving correctly, or whatever you want to call it, weight shift or what have you, and you hang back or you don't know how to move and you want more speed like you see in Kyle and any good ball striker, take a look at this video because I spend 30 minutes walking you through how to do this move, how to create complete automation in your golf swing. And what I mean by that is that if you're coiled correctly, so many of these things should happen naturally. The muscles should be loading so quickly and unloading so quickly that your downswing fires in sequence on automatic. But if it's not, take a look at the video. I promise you it'll help you understand how to trigger the swing, how to create speed, and how to sequence your swing like the goats.